What is the criminal mind of a mass murderer? What are the causes, and what, if anything, can stop them? Find out next. And we're back. This video is for educational purposes. Recently, there's been many of these mass murder crimes, but what causes someone to do it? What are the warning signs to look out for, and how can they be stopped? We're gonna break down this criminal mind psychology and behavior to find out. Now, let's get started. When we're evaluating the cause for a subject's behavior, there's essentially two main drivers, environmental and biological. However, many times the subject's environment amplifies their biological drivers.
How could someone ever get to that point? How could you ever feel like you wanted to hurt that many people? And sadly, I do know how that feels. Constantly getting bullied and picked on. Every school I went to, there's a new set of bullies.
It's very typical for mass murderers to have a psychopathology, a mental or behavioral disorder that they're either born with and or develops in life due to their environment. However, what's very curious is that mass murderers don't always have a major mental disorder like many would expect, such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. As we mentioned, they usually have a psychopathology, but not usually a severe one. Only 10% of mass murderers had psychosis.
He was shy, likable, with hands-on parents
who put them to bed with stories and prayers and hugs.
Sue Klebold calls Dylan her shiny penny. In gifted classes, loved Little League, gave big hugs and kisses, and built tall ships out of Legos.
We saw this when we broke down Nicholas Cruz's behavior when he was getting arrested and then interrogated.
What's going on today, bro?
The demons, man.
Demons?
Voices.
Voices and demons?
Where's the voices?
He tried to convince police officers that a voice had told him to do it all, which would be a form of psychosis, such as schizophrenia.
Why wouldn't he protect me, man?
I don't know.
Why wouldn't you protect me?
All right, well, again, your demon wants an attorney. Does the demon know an attorney? Any name in particular?
However, he was clearly just faking it to avoid taking responsibility for doing what he knew was evil. So it's quite curious that someone with a low to moderate psychopathology could do one of the worst things imaginable. Therefore, environmental factors such as how they were raised and their life experiences have a major impact on someone becoming a mass murderer.
I was fat. I was smelly, I read comic books, I was sensitive. I was just picked on by everybody. I started to adapt that I'm the monster, I'm the broken one.
As you may expect, nearly all mass murderers are male, 97.7%. 52.3% are white, 20.9% are black, 8.1% Latino, 6.4% Asian, 4.2% Middle Eastern, and 1.8% Native American. 48% actually leak their plans directly to friends, family members, or even law enforcement.
You could just see it in his eyes, you just get a cold glare in his eyes and say, one of these days, I swore I'm gonna do it. We thought he was all joking.
But at the time, they didn't think of telling their parents, let alone the police. To them, it was just Eric and Dylan's twisted humor.
70% of the perpetrators knew at least some of their victims. 77.2% used handguns.
And I knew where to get a gun because there was gangbangers that went to my school. So I went up to him like, hey, can you get me a gun? He's like, yeah, sure, get me an ounce of weed. That was actually pretty easy. Went to my mom's house, stole an ounce of drugs off a guy sleeping on my mom's floor. Like, all right, give me 3 days, I'll get you a gun.
On the news, we understandably hear a lot about schools, but K through 12 makes up 7.6% of these crimes. Colleges and universities, 5.2%, places of worship, 6.4%, bars and restaurants, 13.4%, retail, 16.9%. But can you guess the place of the highest percentage of mass murder? Yes, workplace at 30.8%. Understandably, when children are involved, it receives a lot of media attention. However, these are much more common outside of school. A mass murderer's motives are quite different than other types of murderers. When someone murders a specific individual that they know, it's usually done out of personal rage or revenge against that individual. Serial killers usually perversely blend sexual pleasure with violence and death, such as with Ted Bundy.
Much too late, but better late than never. Feel the hurt and the pain that I am responsible for.
Family annihilators have an abnormally romantic ideal of their family and view their family as possessions where they can decide if they want them around or not, such as with Chris Watts.
I want them wherever they're at. Like, I have no inclination to where they're at right now. I like these shirts a lot.
There are many other types of murderer profiles, and mass murderers also have their own behavioral traits, motives, and profile. A mass murderer usually wants a flashy show of violent force to revenge against society, to finally be seen, feel powerful, and become relevant and known.
Been screaming out my entire life and nobody heard me. I felt my whole life like if I walked out of a room, people would forget that I was there. Like I was just invisible, and I was gonna make them hear me now.
We saw this demonstrated in the Sandy Hook Promise video, where the unsub was in the background showing all the warning signs of irrelevance, violence, and motive. In Columbine High, the two subjects discussed gleefully how what they were doing will make them famous and how movies will be made about them.
And their phrase is, when they make a movie about this, they hope that either Quentin Tarantino or Steven Spielberg direct it because they could get it just right.
Yes, there is usually a revenge motive against coworkers, management, classmates, or bullies. However, that's typically not the only driver for mass murder due to their largely indiscriminate nature of their attack.
Hate. I'm full of hate, and I love it. I hate people, and they better fear me if they know what's good for them. I'll get revenge soon enough.
Now, if these subjects are seeking a flashy show of violent force to finally be known and seen as relevant, a major motive for this behavior seems to emerge. Yes, the global 24-hour media coverage of these terrible events not only incentivizes mass murderers, but also increases the damage that they seek to receive the most media coverage to finally achieve their desperately desired fame, notoriety, and relevance.
Cocktail of malice, self-loathing, and a craving for fame. Over time, they became something like a two-man cult, bent on making their mark on the world in one final act.
If you're thinking what's the point of all that if they're dead, there's almost always a depression component to their psychopathology, so they've usually accepted suicide or suicide by cop as their final outcome, with around 60% dying on the scene. Therefore, if they didn't want to live in the first place and they wanted to get back at society in the harshest way possible to finally be seen and known, you can see how the pieces would sadly come together for them.
All that fantasy, that just crystallized. I know exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm either gonna go to my school or I'm gonna go to the food court at the mall. And the only difference that is the time of the day, of what time I was gonna get the gun.
A major behavioral sign we notice consistently with mass murderers young and old is their significant use of social media. Since many mass murderers are more introverted and socially awkward, social media is a perfect means to passively gain the initial attention they so desire.
Created a webpage entitled, You Know What I Hate. Increase your vocabulary, Star Wars fans.
Social media paints a picture of a young man who was disturbed, angry, and obsessed with guns.
This is to both find a like-minded community and to desperately seek any type of attention just to be noticed, since negative attention feels better to them than no attention at all.
Asking about purchasing a shotgun.
However, it's also their subconscious means of crying out for help. Let's break down this curious psychosocial behavior. If a future mass murderer was certain they wanted to commit the act, why would they consistently post on social media, publicly hinting at their plans, risking their plot unraveling?
Comment Cruz allegedly made on a YouTube video.
The entire website was dedicated to how he was going to kill the entire state of Colorado.
Right, this is because they are not certain of it and they want to be caught, stopped, and helped, but of course they don't know how to seek help or even accept help. Therefore, since the subject usually believes they can't be helped, their rage and blame against society grows in a downward spiral that results in feelings of hopelessness and demise.
In big capital letters, he wrote, "Kill mankind." The entire diary is a litany of hate.
Here's the full profile. A mass murderer is typically a male, 34.1 on average, who wants to get back at their community or society for either being ignored and or mistreated and wants to finally feel relevant and powerful.
Eric is much more stoic. Dylan's having the time of his life. Unbelievable how happy he is. He's giddy.
And I looked up at Dylan and I said, "Hey, Dylan." And he said, "Hey, man." And I said, "What are you doing?" And it still like chills me how he was just like, killing people.
There will usually be at least one major life event or circumstance that causes them to slip further down this dark path, such as the death of a family member, extensively bullied, an abusive parent, getting expelled from school, or getting fired from a job.
They were the bottom two kids in the entire school, not just out of the senior class. The entire school, they were the two uncoolest kids. So they were the losers of the losers.
People are always making fun of me. I don't like it. I need some help. Ooh!
The fictional drama enables them to avenge their actual daily humiliation.
They are often introverts who want attention, fame, power, notoriety to specifically get back at society and those who wronged them.
No, you goddamn piece of punk-ass shit! Do not mess with that friggin' kid! If you do, I'll rip off your goddamn head and shove it so far up your friggin' ass, you'll be coughing up dandruff for 4 frickin' months!
Look, I don't care what you say. If you ever touch him again, I will frickin' kill you. I'm gonna pull out a goddamn shotgun and blow your damn head off. Do you understand, you little worthless piece of crap?
Imagine that in someone's brain.
But since they are often introverts, they find it difficult and frustrating to acquire their desired attention. Therefore, they will often seek this desired attention by actively confiding in a social media community to satisfy their near-term desires for attention. On their social media, they will often fetishize their weapons and violence, possibly torture animals, and discuss how their life is unfair and how they want to get back at society. This is not only done to find a like-minded community of support, but it's also done to seek attention in a cry for help, even though they would not know how to accept help. This is because they may not think they can be helped, don't think they deserve help, or don't know how to open themselves up to be vulnerable enough emotionally to be helped. This circular feeling of constant helplessness combined with overall hopelessness further drives them down a dark path. They may have a steadily escalating criminal history as they begin to explore new ways of raging against their community, family, friends, or animals to feel powerful.
The whole neighborhood suspected Eric of having put glue into a number of car and house locks and setting fire to trees. The Columbine computer system was hacked into. They stole a list of codes giving access to students' lockers, stealing computer equipment from a vehicle. They were arrested by the police.
This is a felony. 2 felony
It was terrible,
counts.
I know, absolutely. It was awful. And at the time, I thought that was the worst thing I could ever possibly experience.
Dylan's cold reaction after the arrest scared and shocked her. He acted as if he had done nothing wrong.
They'll typically have a psychopathology, such as depression and/or antisocial personality disorder, but usually not one as severe as psychosis.
I hate my life. I want to die. No girls. Nobody accepting me, even though I want to be accepted.
I see jocks having fun, friends, women, lives, or rather shallow existences compared to mine.
They never had any steady girlfriends, and they died virgins.
This profile breakdown is not for anyone to single someone out at work or school, to laugh at, bully, antagonize, or call names, but it's for you to know the warning signs of who needs to be looked out for to be picked back up.
Your friend got to you before you got to the gun.
Yes. The simplest, most human acts. By not treating me like I was a project. By not treating me like I was broken. By, like, dude, you're all right. Sit down, have a meal. You're okay. Watch this movie with me. What do you want to do today? People want to be listened and want to hear that they're okay. I never ended up going to get the gun. I stayed at Mike's house the rest of that weekend and spent time with people who love me.
There are surely some things that both sides of the political aisle can agree on to make our community safer, but we should never just rely on government legislation. If you see something in your community that seems off, say something to an authority to investigate it. However, you must know there's also something called the bystander effect. This is when you naturally assume someone else would report the problem if it was a problem. If you see something that seems wrong, say something to somebody that you think can help. Never assume that someone else would have done it. Even if you have thought someone already said something, the more people who say something, the greater the chances that it will be taken seriously. Think of it as votes to emphasize the importance of a problem. The more people who say it is a problem, the greater the likelihood that it will be considered a problem.
There's a very small section that's going to follow through with the attacks. Okay, they're actually going to follow through with it. Very, very small amount of people that are going to do that. There's a huge amount of people who are in that gray area, in that depressive spot that could, that think that they might, that think that maybe they should. There's a big amount of people in that area, and those are the ones that we can reach.
Now in the comments, what do you think can be done to prevent mass murders? Let everyone know in the comments below. If you're not already subscribed to the Schaik podcast, you may want to do that. We talk about these current event topics in more conversational detail, covering behavior, psychology, body language, unsolved mysteries. The Schaik podcast is everywhere you get your podcast, including Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. You can watch the show here on YouTube. Everywhere you get your podcast, that's where you can find the podcast Shaked. Subscribe because we don't want you to miss out on new behavioral, body language, and investigative videos. See you at the top.